Hi everybody, we're going to talk briefly about preparing for ATI Fundamentals test. A lot of students have difficulty with this exam because it's their first in the style of exam that ATI is preparing you. Most students are very familiar with questions and answers and content questions. The difference between those and your ATI or NCLEX style exam is going to be that they're testing you on your critical thinking abilities, your abilities to process through information. And so this is often a very new format for students. A couple things ATI recommends is to understand your learning style. Most of us as adults have a good idea of how we learn best. Well, one of the resources that I'm going to point you to in ATI has a whole section on understanding your learning style and different things that you can do that best serve your learning style. Another thing they talk about is foundational versus critical thinking, and that explains kind of how this exam is set up. Foundational thinking is basic recall and concepts that are typically foundational to nursing practice. This does not require understanding of the information or how it can be used. It's simply just knowing concepts and recalling information. Critical thinking is the utilization of those concepts and applying them to real scenarios. And that's where the spirit of NCLEX and ATI exams are set, is your ability to not only understand the didactic content that you've learned, but to apply it to different scenarios. Another thing that is applicable regardless of your learning style is just some basic study strategies that are vital to everyone. Being organized, learning how to read effectively, and good time management. Being organized, especially in a program like ours where we are distance learning and competency-based, really puts a lot of emphasis on study time. Not all the work that you do, but a lot of the time that you set aside to go through the modules, the post-tests, and understanding all the information that you are hopefully assimilating. One of the tips I have really is just getting a calendar, printing it out. We send out those Castle One course pacing documents to be used along with your course of study. I also recommend that you take that and break it down into a smaller calendar where you are incorporating things that are important in your life as well. Your work schedule, your family schedule. Those are also very important things, and although those often take a little bit of a hit when it comes to time devoted when you are in school, it really is important to plan in that time to keep your sanity. So if you take all these different necessary dates, times, events, all these different things that are important to you and important to your studies, and put them on one calendar, something to give you a visual where you break it down into a week's time. Typically when you look at the course as a whole, it can be very overwhelming and can seem like a mountain that you are not prepared to climb. So if you break it down in smaller chunks, week by week, often it's easier to manage. So that's one of the tips I would recommend. Another thing the ATI talks about in Nurse Logic is effective reading. Often most of us don't effectively read, and I have to say myself as a student did not get good at this until I was in my master's program. I wish I had learned these tips much sooner in my college career. They talk about skimming the information first, getting an idea of all that is there. Actively read, where you're looking for keywords or phrases and note questions that you have as you're going through it. Ask yourself questions about the main points. Convert headings into who, what, when, where, and why. And also use the 5 phrases of the nursing process. This is a wonderful tip that really helps you translate this information into a way that you can break it down and utilize it as if you would in a critical thinking scenario. They also recommend to stop and think. Recall what you've read section by section before you move on to the next one. And then also review periodically because it increases long-term retention. And this is even if you're not a visual learner. All of us have to do a lot of reading. And so we might as well make use of that time. I think all of us have had a period in which we have been studying and we are reading. We get a few pages in and realize we don't remember anything what we just read, but we know exactly what we have to do that day because we've been daydreaming about that the whole time. So understanding these read effectively tips are also great. And then time management. This I think goes along with organization. Time management is something that's crucially important to nurses in our field. And also as you're preparing to be a nurse or a novice nurse, it helps to organize, keep your study times, and also to make the most of your time when you do have time to devote to school. It's important to maintain consistency in your studies, break big tasks into smaller ones, and then they pride themselves on telling you that regular work plus steady application and self-pacing equals success, and time management and organization go hand in hand. So however you need to map it for yourself, where you are breaking down things so that you are effectively using your time, do it. All of us are different. All of us, some people like to paper and pencil it. Some people like to get out their iPhone and program everything in their calendar there. However you need to do it. Set reminders for yourself on your iPhone if you need to, but whatever works for you, do it. Now I'm going to point you to a few of the resources available to you in ATI. There are some amazing resources. I cannot emphasize enough how underutilized these are. I recommend these to students a lot, and I still think they are underutilized in preparation. One of the first things I'm going to show you is the ATI Fundamentals text. This is the textbook that you'll find it in your resources section. This is the textbook that encompasses everything that you need to know for your fundamentals of nursing assessment. It goes over all of the information that you've done in ATI in both Intro and CASEL 1, which is a lot of information. If you look down here, you can see the whole text is only 647 pages. This is a wonderful review. It's a wonderful tool. It's not something that I recommend replaces your bigger reading in the Pearson text, the Kosher and Herbs. This is great for review. It's not necessarily great to introduce new concepts. I'm going to show you the table of contents. I want to point out something. The ATI assessment is broken out into very specific types of information or sections of learning. You can see here that it's listed here as well. Management of care, safety and infection control, health promotion. And what that does for you is when you take your practice assessment, and we'll talk about that in a moment, when you take your practice assessment, it's going to give you the option to create something called a focused review, where it focuses your test results in conjunction with the text and where you need to review, which is wonderful. It breaks it down into these different sections: management of care, safety and infection control, nursing throughout the lifespan, and so on. And so that gives you a wonderful opportunity to go back and focus in on those areas in which you are struggling before you go take your assessment. Let's open a page. This section, safety and infection control, tends to be a trouble spot for a lot of nurses, novice nurses, especially in the fundamentals test. So that's a hint to make sure you review that pretty thoroughly. So I'm going to go to page 82, and I want to show you how the information is laid out. You can see that it's very, it's kind of like a bullet point text. It's a great review. By the time that you're studying for this assessment, you will or should know these concepts, but it's a great review. And also, this is written by ATI, so this talks about the stuff that's necessary to know for your assessment. So this is a wonderful review. You can see it's very concise. Each chapter is very short. That was an entire chapter. And then at the end, they give you these application exercises for you to practice on. So this is an amazing text. You have the option of saving it as a PDF and keep it on your desktop. This is a wonderful resource. I can't emphasize enough to bookmark this or to save it for future use. So that is my first good resource in ATI that I wanted to show you. The next one is Nurse Logic 2.0. You are going to find that within your tutorial section, just like you would any of your skills modules. So I'm going to click on my tutorials tab, and I am going to see Nurse Logic 2.0. If my computer will speed up. There we go. So you can see Nurse Logic 2.0 right here. Within it, it has 4 modules. These are all very important. A couple of them are pretty short. Testing and remediation is short, and knowledge and clinical judgment is pretty short. Nursing concepts and priority setting frameworks are a little bit longer, and a lot of time I'm sure you'll be spending, I'm hoping you'll be spending in this priority setting frameworks. But I'd like to show you an example of this module, just so you can see what's in here. There's a wealth of information in here. And this priority setting frameworks module is really devoted to helping you as the student learn to identify keywords, key phrases within questions, and also in the options for answering. It'll help you to learn how to discard ones that are not the right answer, utilizing these techniques of priority setting. ATI has 7 that they focus on: Maslow, the nursing process, ABCs, safety and risk reduction, least invasive to least restrictive, survival potential, and then a few other ones. They also have drills. So in this module, they'll give you drills or small questions where you get to practice these new skills that you have. This is an amazing resource. I cannot emphasize enough to you how important this information is. The thing, like I said before, that tends to be hardest for students on this exam is that we are not just testing your use or your knowledge of concepts that you've learned, but of how to utilize those. How do I take information, utilize the knowledge of those concepts, and utilize them in a scenario where you're asked, what do you do next, or select all that apply. And what that means is that they're asking you to be a nurse in the scenario, which is a very different way of thinking than most of us are used to, especially in an exam setting. So Nurse Logic 2.0 really helps you identify keywords in order to hone in on what's important, and so that you can move to your next best step, which will be, what you determine based on your utilization of these concepts. So I definitely recommend highly going through this module until you feel comfortable with it, and then drill yourself. Go to these drills and review them. Another resource, in addition to those 4 modules within Nurse Logic, is this critical thinking guide. You'll see in this upper right hand corner there's 3 links. If you have any questions about terminology, this glossary is good. But the critical thinking guide here, I'm going to click in here, is a great review as well. It encompasses all kind of a short, concise version of Nurse Logic 2.0. So after you've done all the modules in Nurse Logic, there's 4 of them, There's the intro, there's the knowledge and clinical judgment, priority setting frameworks, and then critical reading test items within this critical thinking guide, which is amazing. So knowledge and clinical judgment, and it'll talk about different types of, like I mentioned before, foundational versus critical thinking. Clinical judgment, it helps you break this down into bite-sized chunks that you can utilize and understand before moving on. The priority setting frameworks, which is this is kind of a broken down version of this module. And then the critical reading test items. This is very important right here. This little ditty right here. This talks about how to identify keywords in the stem or the question itself and the options. So this is really important. A lot of us tend to want more information. We're given a question and we're like, well, what if it's a pediatric patient? What if I'm short-staffed? What if I want more information? I want more. Or we read into the question. The way ATI and NurseLogic are set up is that whatever the information is there is there. Do not read into the question. And this will talk to you and teach you about how to identify those critical parts of the question itself to hone in on what's important and what's just distractor material or material that's important but not necessary to answer the question at hand. So this, once again, is part of the Critical Thinking Guide within NurseLogic 2.0. It's in the upper right-hand corner. This is awesome. I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you one thing. I'm going to send out a copy of this recorded webinar along with this document that just kind of points out these really important resources. One of the last things I'd like to point out is this website or Google site that Dee Adkins is doing. She's one of our amazing clinical, course mentors. She's currently doing role transitions and is a big part of our program. She has done a lot with ATI and NCLEX preparation. She's got this Google Doc, which is she's constantly changing and adding to, where she talks about very specific basic tips. Some of these you'll experience in NurseLogic. Sometimes they won't tell you. These general tips I love. In the NCLEX hospital, they are never short-staffed, and all clients are adults unless otherwise specified. Clients respond just as textbooks say they will. There's always enough supplies and resources. So this is a really important document. And if you scroll down to the bottom, she's got a couple links here to some NCLEX books that are great. And NCLEX also can be referred to ATI because, once again, these are set up in the same manner. And then also some prep websites. Down here she's got this table that talks about specific test taking strategies. And if you click on these links over here, these are links to YouTube videos she has done that talk about these very specific test taking strategies. She's done a couple of them that are based on each one of the priority setting frameworks that are listed in NurseLogic. So once again, these are just some tidbits that talk about how you can prepare yourself, because most of you are going to be very well prepared with the content that you know. It's just learning how to translate that into a test-taking environment. And I'm also going to talk to you real quickly about the practice exams or the practice assessments. Each of you will have the option to take 2 of them. We definitely recommend that you do so, and we'll ask you that you do so. We like to see the student, before you schedule your proctored assessment, to get at least a 74% on your practice exam. Now, because you only have access to 2 of them, it's really important that you utilize them wisely. And what I mean by that is, don't just take one just to see where you're at. Hurry and take the second one. And the reason is because these really are meant to give you as much of a real life test-taking practice is possible. So it's a good idea. I usually recommend taking the first one before you go to clinical, but after you've pretty much finished the entire COS, so that you've done all your modules. And this will give you a good idea of where you are and where you need to focus that last few weeks before you take your assessment. If you happen to get at least a 74% or above, you could go ahead and schedule your exam, check with your student mentor, report your practice exam score, and set up your assessment. If you don't, and a lot of students don't get a passing score on their first practice test, what I would recommend that you do is go back into ATI, form that focus review. You'll get this option in the bottom right hand corner when you look at your test results that says, create focus review. I would recommend that you do that, and that will break that those results down, your personal results from that one test, into those different sections within ATI. They also break it down in terms of the nursing process. And so they'll tell you, based on what questions that you missed, which sections of the nursing process you are doing well in or are behind. It breaks down all 5 sections. So it gives you a really great view of not only the concepts you need to review, but also the utilization of those concepts using the nursing process. So that's a great resource. And then once you've done that and you review, I'd recommend you take your second practice exam and see where you're at. I think that it's a great idea to keep that second practice exam for right before you want to test, just so you can set it up for kind of as much of a real life scenario as possible. The ATI assessment is 65 questions in 60 minutes. So it's it's an exam where you just kind of clip right along. You don't have the option to go back, and I know some students like that option. They think, shoot, if I missed one, or this is a right answer, then the answer I did 5 questions ago is wrong. I want to go back. Well, guess what? You don't have time, and you don't have the option to anyway. So it's a great idea when you are taking these practice exams to set yourself up an hour. If you have to wait till your kids are in bed, do it. Set yourself up that hour so that you can time yourself and give yourself a really good idea as far as how prepared you are prior to going to your proctored exam. You want to get all those kinks out, all the nerves out, as much as you can before you go sit for your assessment. Well, I think that is mostly the information that I wanted to tell you guys. I want to encourage you that if you have any questions about any of this stuff, please just shoot me an email. I'm here for you. I cannot emphasize enough that I am on your side. I want you to do well, and I'm happy to point you in directions of information so that you are as prepared as possible. And we have got some great resources available to us. So if you'll use them, it helps a lot. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to hear from all of you very soon. But let me know if you have any questions. Take care.